Hey there, how's it going? So we're still not fishing yet. Tomorrow we're supposed to have another blast of winter, freezing rain and snow. We're getting there though. Hopefully this is the last hurrah for winter. But I thought today we could take a look at the inline spinner, especially for the new people in the sport who may need or want a better understanding of what an inline spinning lure is. Now, an inline spinner, not to be confused with a spinning lure, is a specific type of lure that is all mounted on a horizontal axis. Now, I'm just going to show you a schematic here to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And you're going to see that this is referring to what's known as a MEPPS. I'm going to explain that too. MEPPS is a brand name, okay, just like Panther Martin, just like Blue Fox, and many others. But we're talking about the inline spinner lure. We're talking about the basic characteristics here, okay, because they come in all kinds of things added to them and whatever have you. So let's take a look at this this schematic. So this is your inline spinner, and they're all based, they all have the following characteristics. They're all going to be on a horizontal axis, which is a stainless steel pin that runs down the center. This is what gives the inline characteristic. They all will have a clevis, which is the thing at the top here where the blade is mounted on. They will have a body. Sometimes that body is made of brass, sometimes it's aluminum, sometimes it's weighted, sometimes it's not. Again, it depends on the style. And then we come down to the hooks. They can be sheathed or unsheathed. And when I say sheathed, we've got that little collar around the hooks itself. They're usually made with treble hooks, but they can be removed, and a single hook can be affixed to this lure as well. And they're all on a horizontal axis, and that gives the inline effect. Everything's in line, all right, except for your spinner, which will stick out the side and flutter when you're casting, when you're retrieving the lure, I should say. Depending on the size of that blade will depend on the angle that it sticks out, and that will give the different vibrations and the different sounds in the water to attract the fish. Now, I mentioned MEPPS. This just give you a little bit of a background there, because you're going to hear this word MEPPS, and a lot of people refer to the inline spinner as a MEPPS. It's just one of those brand names that has become synonymous with the actual product. Now, MEPPS is a French acronym. I am not going to try and say it in French, but in English, it's Manufacturer of Precision Equipment for Sport Fishing. That's the English version. The MEPPS lure was originally designed and created by a French engineer by the name of André Moulnart. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, Moulnart. And he was the first person to create this lure back in 1931. And he got it patented in 1938. His first lure was the MEPPS skimmer. And I've got some an image here of his original drawings. Now, this lure didn't make its way to the United States until the late 1940s. And it was basically used as a trout lure. Now, in Europe, they don't have small and largemouth bass, or in the UK, like we have here. These lures were initially designed for trout fishing. Now, the lure eventually came to the United States in the late 1940s by a returning GI from the Second World War. He gave this lure to a man named Todd Sheldon. Mr. Sheldon was out fishing one day, and he was having absolutely no luck getting anything. He thought, I've got this little MEPPS thingamajiggy. I'm going to try it out. Now, he was a very successful tackle store owner at this time, so he knew what he was doing. He tried it out, and it was the bomb. He couldn't believe how well it worked. I believe it said that within like 2 to 3 hours, he caught 4 trout fish that were all over 12 pounds, and he couldn't get enough of this lure. So he started buying material, the lures from the MEPPS factory, from Moulnart's factory in France, and bringing over to the US to sell them. Well, his demand went beyond his supply, so he had to start building them, making them himself, getting the parts from Europe, and then assembling them himself. And it just took off. And of course, he created Sheldon Inc., which is still in existence today and still assembles the MEPPS lures to this day. So that's a little bit of a history behind the MEPPS lure. So if you hear the word MEPPS, it's usually referring to an inline spinner. There's other brand names like Panther Martin, Blue Fox, and so on. But they're all much of a muchness. But they, they've all got their little individual characteristics. But the basic lure, the basics of the lure is the same. Now, what do you use these for? Well, as I said, they were initially designed and created to be a trout lure. However, you can use them for anything. It was discovered when they started using them here in North America that this lure is good for bass, it's good for walleye, it's good for trout, and it's even good for panfish. They come in various different sizes. They will be rated from 00 up to 6 or 7. The larger the number, the bigger, as the number progresses, the bigger the lure gets. The smallest is 00. So you can use them for panfish right up to big trout, whatever. They're a multi-species lure. Now, they're a cast and retrieve lure, right, guys? You don't just throw them out there and let it sit and wonder what the hell's going on. It's cast and retrieve. So cast, retrieve. When you're retrieving, that's when the blade flutters and creates a vibration and a pitch in the water that attracts fish. And they're great search casting, as you cast around. But you got to be careful with these lures because they do snag because of the trebles. All right, so just be careful in weeded areas or area where there's a lot of hidden dangers under the surface. Know your water. As I mentioned before, you can remove the treble. They're usually on a split ring. And if you don't like trebles, I don't like trebles, I take the trebles off and I put a single hook on. I feel much better about it that way because they're not as vicious as trebles. You can also bait your hooks as well. You don't have to use just the naked lure. You can tip your hooks with a plastic bait. You can put cut bait on. You can put worm fragments. So you can do it that way. There's all kinds of ways you can fish with these things. They're absolutely great. They really are. So if you want to give them a try, I recommend you get maybe 3 or 4 different sizes and different colors. Don't just go with the one. Now, I've heard people say to me back when I was working for Bass Pro, hey, I use the same one all the time and it never fails me. Every time I go out there, bang, 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 boop. That's great. If it works for you, great. You might want to try the different sizes and the different colors because water conditions and fishing conditions, whatever, they change constantly. And the same lure that may have worked this morning may not work at all this afternoon. So it's always good to get a couple of different ones so you can experiment with. And remember, as I said, guys, you want to try them out. They're a cast and retrieve lure. You cast out and retrieve in. Okay? And that is an inline spinner, aka the MEPPS lure. All right? So why don't you go get yourself some? You can find them in any of your outdoor stores. They're easy to obtain. Go out and try them. So this is Sharon saying, thanks for watching. Hopefully soon the weather will get more spring-like and we can actually get out and do a little bit of fishing. All right? Until then, thanks for watching and tight lines.
Are you sure about that?